The bellwether was the kind of building that whispered its secrets, tucked between half-forgotten blocks on the east side of the city. Its Art Deco face had weathered decades of soot and silence. Ornate metalwork framed the windows, and tarnished brass glinted faintly in the sun. To some, it was a relic. To others, a tomb. Rachel Mercer didn't care about its history. She was a writer, and all she wanted was quiet. The rent was cheap. That was enough. She moved into apartment 14B in late September, her life packed in boxes labeled with lies: kitchen, office, books, instead of what they really were: escape, failure, things left behind. The elevator was vintage, the kind you only see in movies, a brass cage operated by a lever instead of buttons. The day she moved in, the operator, Mr. Granger, a lean old man with eyes like dirty coins, pointed out something curious. "There's no 13th floor," he said, tapping the panel. It jumped from 12 straight to 14. "Old superstition." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You believe in that?" "I believe in what I see, and what I don't." He gave her a grin missing 2 teeth. "Stay away from what isn't yours." The comment lingered with her longer than it should have. For weeks, nothing happened. Rachel settled in. She spent her mornings writing, her afternoons walking, her nights dreaming of things better left buried. The bellwether creaked and sighed around her like an old man talking in his sleep. Every so often, she'd glance at the elevator's panel and think, what if? One stormy night, the elevator answered her. She was returning from a late-night walk, soaked from head to toe. Mr. Granger had gone for the night, and the lift was running on auto. She stepped inside, pulled the lever for 14, and leaned back against the cage. It descended normally, until it didn't. The lights flickered, the lift shuddered, then stopped. Rachel looked up. The number above her wasn't 12, it wasn't 14, it was 13. Her heart skipped. She hadn't pressed anything, hadn't even known such a floor existed. The doors creaked open. The hallway beyond was nearly identical to her own. Same wallpaper, same sconces, but faded, smeared with water damage, and something darker. The carpet was wet underfoot, as if soaked in rain or something worse. Rachel should have stayed inside, she knew that, but curiosity, it always outran her fear. She stepped out. Each footstep echoed too long, as though the hallway stretched far beyond what her eyes could see. The doors were all ajar, black gaps staring back at her. At the far end of the hallway stood a massive mirror, the glass so polished it seemed to pulse. Rachel walked toward it, trying not to look left or right. When she reached it, her reflection didn't move. It stared back, eyes hollow, mouth curled into a smile too wide for her face. Then slowly, it raised its hand and beckoned. Rachel stumbled back just as a door opened behind her. A figure stood in the gap. No floated. It was a person once, no longer. Skin gray, limbs too long, head lolling like a marionette with tangled strings. Another emerged, then another. They made no sound as they drifted toward her. Rachel turned and ran. The elevator was still open, waiting like a mouth. She dove inside, slammed the lever. The doors shut, just as a hand scraped across the threshold. She collapsed in the corner, gasping. When the lift reached the lobby, it was as though nothing had happened. Music played softly from a radio. Lights glowed warm. Mr. Granger was back, sipping coffee from a stained thermos. "You all right, miss?" he asked. Rachel said nothing, but her boots, they were soaked, and not with rain. The dreams came next. In them, she stood in that hallway again, staring at her reflection. Sometimes it bled, sometimes it screamed, sometimes it spoke in her voice, saying, "Come back, please, you left me here." Rachel tried to research the building's history. Records were sparse. The bellwether had been constructed in 1927 by a man named Elias Bellwether, an eccentric inventor. Rumors surrounded him: loss, tragedy, occult practices. The building's original blueprints showed a floor 13. It had been sealed off in 1934, 13 residents had disappeared that year. No explanation, no investigation, just silence. Rachel stopped sleeping. When she closed her eyes, the mirror waited. Then one night, she found a message scratched into the inside of her bathroom mirror. "You brought it back." She moved out the next morning. Lena Hart moved in the following week. 26, eager, and recently hired by a small investigative journalism outfit. Lena found the bellwether charming, quirky, perfect for a fresh start. The elevator fascinated her. "No 13th floor?" she asked Mr. Granger. "Never was," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. But the mailroom told a different story. A faded missing person flyer clung to the corkboard near the mail slots. A woman with tired eyes and long dark hair. Rachel Mercer. Lena thought she looked familiar. 3 nights later, the elevator took her there. She hadn't pressed anything, had only stepped inside, heading down for a walk. The light above the door flickered, then the number appeared. 13. The doors opened. A hallway stretched before her, familiar and wrong. And standing at the end, Rachel Mercer. Only something was different. Her skin looked stretched, her eyes hollow. Rachel beckoned, and Lena, against every instinct, stepped out. The hallway was cold as a morgue. Mirrors covered the walls now. Each one held a different version of Rachel, crying, laughing, bleeding, whispering her name. "Lena, help me, come closer." From the shadows, something crawled. Rachel appeared again, real this time, gasping, injured, terrified. "She's not me," she screamed. "She's the reflection." Lena looked from one Rachel to the other. The first smiled, slowly. Wrong. The second bled. She made her choice. They ran together, down twisted halls that pulsed like veins. The building shifted around them, groaning in pain or hunger. Behind them came the reflection, now a tall, faceless thing, with a mouth full of Rachel's voice. "You shouldn't have come. Now you belong." They reached the stairwell. Rachel slammed the door shut behind them. "There's one way out," she said. "The real elevator. But the mirror's going to trick you." "How do I know which is real?" "You don't. You have to feel it." The reflection broke through the door. 2 elevators waited at the bottom, one pristine, one warped. Lena ran. She chose the left. The doors closed. The world went black. Then light returned. The lobby, warm, real. Mr. Granger looked up. "You all right, miss?" Lena said nothing, just stepped out, trembling. The bellwether was sold 2 weeks later, closed for renovation. Lena wrote the story under a pseudonym. No one believed her. She moved away, changed her number. But sometimes, in tall buildings, she still watches the elevator panel, and sometimes, just sometimes, the light flickers between 12 and 14, and her reflection doesn't follow her movements. Part 3. Reflected. It had been 3 months since Lena Hart escaped from floor 13 of the bellwether. 3 months of silence. No dreams, no whispers, no flickering elevator panels. She told herself it was over, but something was wrong. It started subtly. Her reflection would blink a beat too late in bathroom mirrors. Storefront windows showed her wearing different clothes. And sometimes, when she passed glass, she saw someone else entirely. Rachel Mercer, mouth open, eyes hollow, always staring. Then the messages returned. First on fogged mirrors after a shower. "Come back." Then etched into her steamed-up car window. "You never left." Lena didn't sleep much after that. One night, she was walking home from work, late, exhausted. The streets were nearly empty. She passed an alley she swore hadn't been there before. Its entrance looked familiar. Crumbling brick arch, rusted sign overhead. But what truly caught her attention was what lay at the end. A brass elevator door, identical to the one at the bellwether. No building surrounded it, just the frame, embedded in the wall, like a scar. The light above flickered to life. The doors creaked open. There was no elevator shaft, just an impossible void of black, and a voice. Rachel's voice. "You left me here." Lena backed away, but her reflection, visible in a cracked mirror, hung nearby, didn't move. It smiled and stepped out. The reflection, the thing that looked like Lena, was perfect. Same smile, same eyes, same voice. But it didn't blink. It followed her home. It mimicked her. Neighbors said hello to it in the hallway. Her boss complimented her work, unaware that the person behind the screen was no longer Lena. And Lena, she was unraveling. Windows reflected the thing, not her. Her voice echoed back, distorted on phone calls. Her face, once sharp and alive, now looked flat and pale in every surface. One night, she stood before her bathroom mirror, breathing hard, hands on the counter. Her reflection leaned forward and whispered. We switched. Lena smashed every mirror in her apartment. She covered the windows in black cloth. She turned off her phone, her laptop, anything with a screen. It didn't matter. She started hearing things behind her. The whisper of her own voice, the echo of her own footsteps. Her reflection followed her in shadows now, not glass. Then came the phone call. She picked up, shaking. Lena Hart, a voice rasped. We found something in the wreckage. Bellwether was being cleared today. The crew opened the elevator shaft. Pause. There's no mechanism, no cables, just a mirror, and someone inside it. Her voice, barely audible, came over the line again. Please help me. It was her, the real Lena, trapped behind the glass. Last call. She returned to the Bellwether one last time. The building was cordoned off. Windows were boarded, but the elevator was still there, waiting like it never left. When she stepped inside, her reflection was already in the glass, watching, smiling. You know what you have to do, it whispered. I want my life back. Lena said, you gave it away. The elevator moved on its own. It stopped between 12 and 14. The doors opened. Rachel stood there, but she wasn't alone. Hundreds of reflections lined the hallway now, twisted, broken versions of the living, all pressing against the glass, waiting. Lena took one last breath, then stepped through the mirror room. The hallway swallowed Lena Hart whole. As soon as she crossed the elevator threshold, the air changed. It grew thick, metallic, like old blood. The lights buzzed overhead, dim and pulsing like a heartbeat. All the mirrors were gone now. In their place were open doorways, each leading to a version of her life that never happened. In one, she was a child, drowning in a bathtub, while her mother wept in the hallway. In another, she sat at her office desk, unmoving, gray and rigid, as if she'd been dead for weeks. In another still, she was Rachel, screaming as the walls closed in. It was a maze of what-ifs, each room more twisted than the last. Each one felt real. She wandered for hours, maybe days. Time moved differently here, or didn't move at all. Then she found the mirror room. It was circular, vast, and made entirely of reflective glass. Floor, walls, ceiling, everything gleamed with her face. Thousands of her, all watching. And in the center, a throne of broken mirrors. Sitting upon it, Elias Bellwether, or what was left of him. His body was gaunt, skeletal, but draped in a velvet robe, long as a funeral train. His eyes were dark, sockets lit from within by silver fire. His skin shimmered like mercury. You found me, he rasped, smiling with teeth like glass shards. You built this, Lena said, her voice echoing in the room from 100 mouths. I opened a doorway, Bellwether said. Long ago, my daughter, she died. I wanted to bring her back. But mirrors don't show the dead, they show what's waiting. Lena trembled. What's waiting? He pointed around them. All of them. The ones who died wrong. The forgotten. The reflections we never become. The glass pulsed, and for a moment, Lena saw herself hundreds of versions, trapped behind walls, behind lives, behind decisions she never made. And Rachel? Lena asked. Bellwether tilted his head, one of the few who resisted, until she didn't. From the wall stepped Rachel, half her face glass, the other human. Her eyes begged for help. She's not lost yet, Lena said. Bellwether's smile faltered. But you are. The mirror throne cracked. The room began to shatter. The reflection Lena entered the chamber. She was radiant, flawless, perfect, soulless. Her smile never touched her eyes. "Time's up," she whispered. All the mirrors went black. Lena looked at Rachel, who held out a hand. "We can still leave, together." "How?" Lena asked. Rachel lifted a broken shard of mirror, razor sharp. "The only way out is through the self that brought you in." The reflection stepped forward, extending her own blade. "You're me," Lena whispered. "No," the thing said. "I'm what's left when you forget who you are." Lena didn't hesitate. She took the shard from Rachel. Her reflection lunged, glass blade flashing. They collided. Lena drove the shard into the reflection's chest. The scream that erupted wasn't hers. It wasn't human. The mirror room shattered. The maze collapsed. The echoes died. And Lena woke. 1 year later, Lena Hart lives in a new apartment now. The mirrors don't ripple anymore. Her reflection is just her. She visits Rachel's mother once a month, brings her flowers. She never tells her the truth. Sometimes, when she closes her eyes, she still hears the sound of mirrors breaking. And sometimes, in dreams, she sees Elias Bellwether still sitting in his throne, waiting in the dark. But in this world, Lena is free, or so she tells herself. In a small antique store downtown, a man purchases an old elevator panel, brass, tarnished, with buttons worn down by time. When he installs it as art in his high-rise office, one button lights up, and in the window behind him, his reflection grins. I never believed in ghosts, not until I encountered one in the most unlikely of places, on a subway platform at 3:33 a.m. I know what you're thinking. Another man spouting off about some late-night horror story. I'd probably think the same thing if I heard this from someone else. But I'm telling you, it happened, and it's something I'll never forget. Not as long as I live, or more accurately, as long as I'm allowed to live. It all started with a late-night train ride I never intended to take. I've worked the night shift at a tech company for over 5 years. It's a solitary job, but it pays well. My commute, always the same. I get on the last train, take it from my office downtown to my apartment on the outskirts of the city. It's a 10-minute ride, no more. Just the hum of the train, and the occasional stop at a lonely, dimly lit station. One night, I missed my train, not in a dramatic way. Just the usual chaos that happens when you stay too late at work. I thought nothing of it. I'd catch the next one. I was wrong. When I arrived at the station, everything felt off. It was nearly 3:30 a.m. by then, and the platform was completely empty. Not a soul in sight. The fluorescent lights flickered above, and the shadows stretched long over the dark tiles. A strange unease settled over me, but I shook it off. The subway system at this hour had a kind of haunted quiet to it, especially at the stations no one cared to clean or maintain. I sat on the edge of the platform, checking my watch. 3:32 a.m. There was a strange stillness in the air, a kind of silence that felt too thick, too heavy. No announcements, no noise from the tunnels, just an empty station and me. Then I heard it, a soft, distant rumbling. It was faint at first, like a whisper, that gradually grew louder until it became the unmistakable sound of an approaching train. I looked down the tunnel. The headlights of the train shone like twin beacons in the dark, but there was something wrong, something I couldn't quite place. The train slowed as it approached. It didn't stop at the usual spot though. It slid to a slow, eerie halt directly in front of me, exactly where I was sitting. The doors opened, and there was no one inside. The train was completely empty. I could see it clearly now. The seats were all vacant, the dim lights flickering like they were struggling to stay on. But what struck me most was the eerie quiet inside. No sounds, no chatter, nothing. I hesitated. What kind of train is this? Why would a subway car arrive at this hour, with no driver, no passengers? I should have turned around, I should have walked away, and never gotten on. But something about it, a strange deep pull, tugged at me. It wasn't curiosity, it wasn't fear, it was like an itch I couldn't ignore, an impulse I couldn't control. I stood up and walked toward the train, drawn to it against my better judgment. The door slid closed behind me as I stepped inside. The inside of the train was different from any subway car I'd ever been on. It was old, faded upholstery, cracked windows, the metal rails dull with age. There were no advertisements on the walls, no maps of the subway system, just peeling paint and worn-out signs. I found an empty seat and sat down. The train moved, but it didn't seem to accelerate the way it usually did. It felt more like floating, gliding through the dark underground tunnels. I checked my watch, 3:33 a.m. I laughed to myself. The coincidence was too much to ignore. This is ridiculous, I thought, but that laugh quickly died in my throat. When the train plunged into darkness, the lights flickered, went out completely, and I was enveloped by a black void. For a moment, I thought the train had stopped, but no, it hadn't. I could feel it still moving, but the world outside had gone completely black. There was nothing but silence. Then the lights flickered back on, and I was no longer alone. Across from me, a figure sat. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. The train's dim light cast shadows in odd places, so I figured it was just a trick of the light. But no, there, sitting directly across from me, was a man. I couldn't see his face at first. His head was bowed, his hands resting on his lap. He wore a long dark coat, and his hands were covered by thick gloves. He looked ordinary, too ordinary. I couldn't make out his features, but something about the way he sat, motionless, silent, sent a chill through me. I thought about calling out to him, but something held me back. I just sat there, staring at the figure, waiting for him to move. And then, finally, he did. He raised his head. I froze. His face was a blur, a swirl of colors, like someone had taken an eraser to his features, leaving nothing but a gray smudge where his face should have been. His eyes though, his eyes were still there, dark, hollow, unblinking eyes, staring directly at me. I wanted to scream, but my throat went dry. My heart pounded in my chest. What was happening? What was this? Then the man spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." His words sent a shiver down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, but no sound came out. I felt trapped, paralyzed, as the train continued its eerie journey through the underground darkness. The man leaned forward slightly. I could see the outline of his mouth, twisted in a way that made my stomach churn. "It's too late now," he said, and then he stood up. The moment he did, the air inside the train grew colder. My breath came out in visible puffs, but he wasn't moving normally. His body jerked slightly with each step, like a marionette with tangled strings. He stopped beside me. His breath, or what I thought was breath, was a sharp, chilling gust of wind. I turned away from him, but my body refused to move. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. And then, the lights flickered again. This time, when they came back on, the man was gone. I was alone again, but the train didn't stop. It kept moving through the black tunnels, as if it had no destination. I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. I rushed toward the doors, pressing the button to open them, but nothing happened. The doors didn't budge. I slammed my palms against the glass. Nothing. And then, I heard it. A sound from the back of the train. Footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps. Someone, or something was walking toward me. I spun around, my heart pounding. The figure from before was back, but now, he was different. His face, it wasn't just a blur anymore. It was a mask, a distorted reflection of someone I didn't know, but I knew that face. It was mine. The man was me. The footsteps grew louder. The thing that looked like me was getting closer, its movements jerky, unnatural. I staggered backward, falling into the seat. My head spun, my breath quickened. The thing that looked like me reached out, its hand hovering above my own. And then I knew. This wasn't a train, it wasn't a ghost, it was a trap, a loop. The train wasn't taking me anywhere, it was taking me back to the worst day of my life. I don't know how long I've been riding this train. I don't know if I'm still alive, or if this is some nightmare I can't wake up from, but I'm still here, trapped in this endless journey, unable to escape. I've seen the ghost, or the thing that looks like me, over and over. Every time, it's closer. I'm not sure what it wants, but I'm starting to realize something. It's not just taking me back to that day, it's taking me to the end. And every night, at 3:33 a.m., it arrives, with no driver, no passengers, and one more person for the train. If you're ever waiting at a subway platform, at exactly 3:33 a.m., and you hear the rumble of a train that shouldn't be there, and you see the doors open, don't get on. Trust me, you don't want to know what happens when you do. My name is Walter Gibbons, and I've owned the Rosedale Apartments for nearly 22 years. It's an old brick building. 3 stories, 12 units. It's not much, but it paid for my retirement. I've had quiet tenants, some students, a few loners, even a retired couple once. People come and go, like anywhere else, except in one place, apartment 4B. The 4th floor doesn't technically exist, not on paper anyway. It's a small attic conversion, a leftover space between the 3rd floor ceiling and the slope of the building's gable roof. There's only one room up there, tucked behind a short staircase. I've never listed it online. I only ever rent it when someone comes to me desperate. No references, no ID checks, just a month's cash up front. I call it my emergency unit. I didn't believe the stories at first. That changed a year ago. The last tenant, Mara, was a quiet woman in her 30s, said she just needed a place for a few weeks. She paid in full and barely spoke. Moved in with one suitcase and a cat carrier. I never saw the cat. That night, at 3:12 a.m., I was woken by screaming. Not the usual kind. This was primal, ragged. I rushed upstairs, fumbled with the skeleton key, and found the door locked from the inside. The screaming stopped the second my hand touched the knob. When I forced the door open, Mara was gone, completely. Not a trace, no suitcase, no signs of a struggle, no smell, no cat, just an empty apartment, and the lights were still on. That was the 7th time it happened. 7 tenants in 4 years. Some ran out the next morning, babbling nonsense. Some never left at all. After Mara, I decided no more. I locked the door to 4B, left it vacant, but something about it called to me. I don't mean in a poetic way. I mean it literally whispered. At night, a voice under the door, humming lullabies that echoed with old pain. So I did what any old fool might do. I bought a camera. Part 2. First night I installed the camera when the apartment was empty. No tenants, just an old sofa and a kitchenette. I left the lights on and wired the camera to my laptop downstairs. It was motion triggered and ran night vision automatically. The first night, I watched the screen with a bottle of whiskey and more curiosity than fear. Nothing. Dust motes floated through the lens, an occasional flicker as the radiator clicked. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the motion alert beeped. The image on the screen glitched, then stabilized. I leaned closer. The apartment was different. The couch was gone. In its place stood a child's crib, wooden, hand-carved, empty. The kitchenette had become a cast-iron stove and a sink basin from another era. And in the corner, a woman, pale, silent, standing perfectly still, facing the wall. I tried to rewind the footage. The timeline reset. Everything had vanished. Over the next week, I kept the camera rolling. Every night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., the apartment changed. Not just decor or lighting, it rewound time, became someone else's pain. One night, it was a 1950s living room, soaked in blood. Another, a hospital room, where a woman screamed while giving birth, alone. Another night, the screen filled with black smoke, as fire licked the edges of the walls, and unseen people screamed for help. Each scene lasted exactly 3 minutes. Then, the apartment reset. Normal. Empty. Like nothing ever happened. Part 3. I let someone in. I became obsessed. I didn't rent it out. Not at first. But I started researching each scene, cross-referencing the styles, furniture, details. I found newspaper clippings that matched some of the visuals. A woman who lost a child in 1947. A hospital fire in 1963. A murder-suicide in 1982. Each pain-filled moment was real, and the apartment was feeding on it. I wrote everything down in a notebook, made diagrams, drew maps, plotted the timeline. And then, 2 weeks ago, someone knocked on my office door. She was maybe 25, small, big eyes, red around the rims, like she hadn't slept in days. Said her name was Hannah. Her boyfriend left her. She had nowhere to go. I should have said no, but I was tired of not knowing, tired of guessing. I handed her the key to 4B, and I watched. Part 4, the feed that night. The camera feed began like clockwork. Hannah sat on the edge of the bed. She looked nervous but calm. The light above her flickered. She looked around the apartment, as if hearing something I couldn't. Then she stood and walked to the wall. At 3:11 a.m., she pressed her hand against the plaster, and the wall opened. A seam split down the middle, revealing darkness beyond. Not a room, not a hallway, something else. She hesitated, turned around, but it was too late. Hands, thin, gray hands, reached out and pulled her in. The camera glitched. Then for exactly 3 minutes, the screen filled with her memories. I saw her as a little girl, hiding under a bed, while someone shouted in the next room. I saw her in a hospital, crying as a nurse shook her head. I saw her boyfriend leaving her on a rainy street. Every moment, soaked in agony. And then, the apartment was empty again. After Hannah, when the apartment went still again, I just sat there. For a long time. The screen was dark, the camera showing nothing but the ordinary, dusty room. The same worn kitchenette, the same cracked tile. No sign that Hannah had ever been there. No screaming, no blood, no mess, just absence. I replayed the footage, over and over. The way she touched the wall, the look in her eyes, like she knew. Like something had been calling her since the moment she walked in. I zoomed in on her face, frame by frame, until I saw it. A smile, tiny, sad, surrendering, like she wanted to go. The next morning, I went up to 4B with my master key. I told myself I'd call the police, report her missing, but that felt like a lie. What would I say? That the apartment ate her, that her trauma fed a haunted building. The hallway outside was quiet. Dust lay heavy on the floor. The key trembled in my fingers as I slid it into the lock. Click. I opened the door and stepped into someone else's past. Rewind. The room wasn't mine. Not anymore. It was cold. The air smelled like cigarettes and mildew. The furniture had changed. A heavy recliner. A brown TV with knobs. A shaggy carpet. 1970s decor. Like something out of a forgotten photo album. A low hum vibrated in the walls. Then, a radio crackled to life from somewhere in the corner. A child's voice whispered, "He's coming home drunk again." I turned. The lights flickered. A figure stepped through the front door, middle-aged, furious, fists clenched. He walked through me, like I wasn't there. I backed up against the wall as the scene unfolded. The man shouted. A woman cried from the bedroom. A boy screamed. It was happening around me, like a memory looping over itself. playing to an invisible audience. The walls shivered, and I felt something hungry, not in the room, behind it, as if the apartment were just the skin of something else, something with a gaping mouth and an endless appetite. Pain was its food, and I had just walked into the kitchen